The human who shouldn't have been there. The crash was loud. Smoke rose high from the broken ship. Derek, a human technician from Earth, crawled out of the wreckage, coughing. His body ached. His suit was torn. Blood ran down his arm. He had no idea where he was. All he knew was, this planet wasn't Earth and it wasn't friendly. Around him were thick blue trees that whispered like they were alive. The sky was green with two suns hanging low. Strange animal sounds echoed from the shadows. He checked his wrist device. It blinked red. No signal. No contact. No help. Derek knew this place. He had read about it in secret reports back at base. The planet was called Zelara. No humans were allowed here. It belonged to the alien race called the Valari, beautiful, dangerous beings who lived in giant crystal cities. Their queen was feared and worshipped. They called her Seraphine. She was powerful. She was untouchable. And if her guards found him, he would be executed on sight. Still, Derek had no choice. His ship was dead. He was hurt. He needed shelter. He picked up his small backpack and walked through the alien forest, hoping to find water. Every step felt heavy. Every sound made him jump. Suddenly he heard screaming. It was close. Derek dropped to the ground and crawled behind a large root. In the distance, he saw 3 alien soldiers dragging a figure across the dirt. The figure wore chains. It looked thin, almost lifeless. One soldier kicked it. Derek's heart pounded. He wanted to help, but he couldn't. He was a stranger, here. A trespasser. He stayed quiet as the soldiers passed by. Then something strange happened. The ground under him glowed. A soft golden light. It rose from the soil and wrapped around his wrist. He looked down and gasped. A mark was appearing on his skin. A spiral shape, like a sun with wings. It burned, but it didn't hurt. What the? The moment it appeared, everything changed. The air shifted. The trees leaned closer. He felt watched. Before he could move, a voice rang out behind him. He bears the sign. He spun around and saw them. 4 tall alien guards, faces covered in silver masks, weapons glowing in their hands. One stepped forward and said again, louder, "He bears the sign of the chosen. Take him to the queen." Derek opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Before he could run, the guards surrounded him. They didn't hurt him. They didn't chain him. Instead, they bowed their heads slightly and led him toward the shining city in the hills. Hours passed. Or maybe it was minutes. Time felt strange on Zelara. The city wasn't made of stone or metal. It was made of light and crystal floating in the air. Bridges glowed with color. Towers sang like wind chimes. Strange creatures flew overhead. Derek had never seen anything like it. They led him through wide halls filled with soft music and warm wind. Alien nobles watched from behind curtains. Some stared in shock. Others whispered, "Is that a human?" Why him? He carries the mark. Finally, the guard stopped in front of a grand door made of pulsing blue glass. One guard turned to Derek. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not run. Do not lie. You stand before the Queen of Stars." The door opened. And there she was, sitting on a floating throne, her long hair like glowing silk, her skin a mix of silver and rose. Her eyes shone like stars. Queen Seraphine, tall, regal, powerful, beautiful. Derek froze. She stood and walked toward him, silent and graceful. The room fell quiet. Her guards knelt. She looked at him, not with anger, but with deep interest. Then she smiled. "So it's true," she said softly. "The prophecy was right." Derek blinked. "What prophecy?" She touched his wrist, where the mark still glowed. "You, human, were chosen. Not by us. Not by me, but by the stars themselves." He laughed nervously. "Look, I think you've got the wrong guy." She raised her hand to silence him. "No, I do not. You entered sacred ground. You bear the royal bond. And now," she stepped closer, You are mine. The room echoed with gasps. Derek's legs felt weak, his heart pounded. What had he just walked into? The Queen's strange proposal. Derek stood frozen as the Queen's voice echoed in his ears. But it wasn't her words that shook him. It was her eyes. They didn't look like a ruler's eyes. Not cold, not cruel. Instead, they were filled with something else. Recognition, like she had known him before he was even born. He sat in silence now, inside a room that glowed with soft, floating lights. Alien symbols danced in the air. Music played from invisible strings. It was peaceful. But Derek couldn't relax. Guards had left. He was alone. With her. Queen Seraphine. She walked slowly across the floor, her feet never quite touching the ground. Her gown flowed like living flame made of glowing threads that shifted color with every breath she took. Finally, she turned to face him. "Are you afraid of me, Derek?" she asked gently. He tried to speak, but only a small laugh came out. "I just crash-landed on a forbidden alien world, was nearly killed, and now I'm apparently married to a queen I met 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm terrified." She smiled. A real smile, not fake or royal. It made her look younger, softer. "I expected anger, not humor," she said. "Interesting." He crossed his arms. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, Your Glowing Majesty, but I didn't sign up for this. I didn't ask for your mark. I didn't ask to be chosen." "No one ever does," she replied, her tone calm. "But the mark does not make mistakes." Derek raised an eyebrow. "What is this mark anyway?" Seraphine walked toward him and waved her hand. A vision appeared in the air. Stars moving in strange shapes. Planets forming. Creatures being born. 1,000 years ago, she began. My people were told of a time when we would begin to die out. No more new life. No more future. She turned to him. But one day, someone from another world would come. A being, marked by the stars. That one would carry the key to our survival, not just as a mate, but as something far deeper. He frowned. "You think that's me?" "I know it is," she said. "The mark has appeared, and no one, no creature, no ruler, not even I, can ignore it." Silence filled the space between them. Derek looked down at his wrist again. The golden spiral glowed faintly, as if listening. He shook his head. "So, what now? You want me to just stay here? Be your prince or your breeding partner or whatever this is?" Her face became serious. "No, I want you to choose." That surprised him. "You're giving me a choice?" Seraphine nodded. "The old way was force, but I have waited long, searched long. I do not want a prisoner. I want someone who understands what this means." Derek stared at her for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the beginning. "Why me?" She walked closer, stopped just inches from him. Then she placed her hand over his heart. "Because when I look at you," she whispered, "I don't see a stranger." Her fingers trembled. "I see the one I've dreamed of, since I was a girl." Derek felt his heartbeat slow. Her touch was warm, real, not magical, not alien, just human. And in that moment, for the first time, he saw not a queen, not a ruler, not a prophecy, but a woman, alone, tired, hoping, just like him. But then, a scream echoed through the palace. The lights flickered. The floating symbols cracked. The music stopped. Seraphine stepped back at once. Her calm mask returned. "What was that?" Derek asked. "Trouble," she said sharply. "Not all support our bond. There are those who would kill you, just for touching my hand." Guards rushed in, whispering in her ear. She nodded quickly and turned to Derek. "You must be hidden. The ceremony is not complete. Until then, you are vulnerable." He took a step back. "Wait, what ceremony?" Seraphine looked at him with both fear and fire in her eyes. "The bond of flame and blood. If it is not completed, your mark will fade, and we will both be..." broken. Before he could ask more, two guards took his arms, not roughly, but fast. "Go with them," Seraphine ordered. "Trust me, this is only the beginning." As Derek was led away through glowing halls and hidden doors, his thoughts raced. He had come to this planet by accident. He had touched something sacred. Now he was being told he was part of a prophecy, loved by a queen, hunted by rebels, and the fate of an entire alien race might rest on whether he said yes or no. The ceremony of flame and blood. Derek smelled smoke before he opened his eyes. Warmth kissed his face, not like sunlight, but fire. He was no longer in the glowing palace halls. He now stood inside a huge underground chamber carved into living stone. Above him, fire floated in midair, spinning in circles. Below, molten rivers glowed red-hot. He wasn't alone. All around him stood figures in black and gold robes. Their faces were covered. None spoke. None blinked. They stood in a perfect circle, watching him, and in the center stood her, Queen Seraphine. Dressed in fire-colored silk, her eyes were brighter than ever. She lifted her hand. "The ceremony of flame and blood begins," she said. Derek didn't move. He had no idea what was about to happen. He had only been told one thing before he was brought here. If you pass, you become one with the Queen. If you fail, the flames take you. He was dressed in ceremonial robes now, strange cloth that clung to his skin and pulsed like it had a heartbeat of its own. The mark on his wrist had grown stronger. It now reached up his arm, glowing like molten gold. The Queen stepped forward and placed a small crystal into his hand. "This is the flame stone," she said. "It will test your heart." "What do I do with it?" he asked. "You don't do anything," she whispered. "It does everything." Suddenly the stone shattered in his palm and everything around him disappeared. He was no longer in the chamber. Now he stood in a storm. Lightning cracked across the sky. Wind howled like wild beasts. The ground beneath him twisted and changed. Then he saw himself. But not like before. He saw a version of himself who was angry, cold, filled with hate. This version of Derek shouted cruel words. He crushed the mark on his own wrist. He turned his back on the Queen. Then he saw another version, one who knelt beside Seraphine as she cried, one who held her as warships exploded in the sky, one who stood between her and a blade. "Choose," said a voice from the clouds. "Which one are you?" Derek felt pain shoot through his chest. He screamed. The vision shattered. He fell to his knees, gasping, back in the chamber again. The stone was gone, but the mark on his arm now burned brighter than ever. Seraphine looked into his eyes. "You saw the path?" He nodded. I saw myself. I saw who I could be. Good and bad. And which did you choose?" "I didn't run," Derek whispered. "I stayed." The robed figures began to chant in an alien language. The flames above them grew higher. The Queen stepped forward and cut her palm with a ceremonial blade. Red gold blood dripped into a silver bowl. She held the blade out to him. "You must bleed too," she said softly. "To bind us." Derek looked at her, this alien queen with the fate of her people in her hands, and without a word, took the blade. He cut his palm. His blood fell into the same bowl. In that moment, something changed. The flames around them flew straight upward. The bowl rose into the air, shining like a second sun. A blast of energy hit both of them, sending them backward, but neither fell. They floated, eyes closed, hands reaching for one another. The mark on Derek's arm spread to his chest. A new mark appeared on Seraphine's, back glowing like a crown. Then came the sound, like a heartbeat echoing across the galaxy. One beat. Two hearts. One bond. When it ended, they both dropped gently to the ground. Seraphine opened her eyes. They were wet. "It is done," she said. "We are now soul-bound." Derek sat up slowly. "So that's it? I'm yours now?" She nodded. And I am yours, in body, in power, in fate. Before he could speak, a guard ran into the chamber, face pale, voice shaking. My queen, the rebels know. They've seen the ceremony fire. They are coming now, to kill him. Seraphine stood at once. No one will harm him, she growled. Derek stood beside her. Let them come, he said. I didn't come this far just to run now. Whispers of betrayal. The knife was meant for his back. It was quiet. Too quiet. Derek stepped through the Queen's moonlit garden, escorted by 2 silent guards. The plants glowed softly under the twin moons, and flowers turned their faces as he passed. It looked peaceful, but he could feel it. Something was wrong. Then came the sound. Click. Not loud, not sharp, but enough. He ducked just as a blade flew past his neck and buried itself in a glowing tree. The guards turned, but not in time. From the shadows, a figure leaped out, another dagger in hand, aimed straight for Derek's heart. Before he could react, something slammed into the attacker, a blur of blue light. A female warrior with gleaming armor tackled the traitor to the ground and pressed a blade to their throat. The traitor hissed, "He's a human. He doesn't belong here. The prophecy is a lie." But the warrior replied, coldly, "The Queen chose him, and now he is one of us." Derek stared in shock as more guards arrived and dragged the attacker away. His heart was pounding. His hands shook. Not from fear, but confusion. Why would someone risk death just to kill him? Inside the palace, Queen Seraphine was waiting for him. She stood by a crystal window, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. When she turned, Derek could see it. Worry. "They've already tried to kill me," he said softly. "Why?" Seraphine looked away. "Because some of my people believe I have made a mistake. That choosing you means the end of our bloodline, not its salvation." "That's not what you believe," he said. She faced him. "No. I believe what I saw in the flame. I believe what I feel. But they don't." "No," she admitted. "Some want to see the prophecy undone, even if it means killing you." That night, Derek could not sleep, not even in the royal chambers where the walls hummed to soothe him and the ceiling showed stars in motion. He sat near the window, staring into the strange sky. And then, a whisper. At first he thought he imagined it, but it came again. "You must leave before it's too late." He turned, but saw no one. Just darkness and silence. Then, from beneath the floor, a hidden panel slid open. A small alien woman with large scared eyes crawled up and dropped a message disc into his lap. "I served the last consort," she said quickly. "He was also marked, but he died, and no one ever found his body." Before Derek could ask more, she disappeared into the shadows again. He played the disc. It showed a recording, a broken one. A man, human-looking, holding the same glowing mark Derek now had. "I thought I was special," the man whispered. "But the palace, like the bond, it's not what it seems. If you see this, run, before they use you too." The screen went black. Derek didn't know what to believe anymore. The Queen had saved him, protected him, even bled with him. But now he wondered, was he really the first? Why hadn't she told him about the other marked human, and what did use mean? The next morning he sat beside Queen Seraphine during a royal council meeting. Dozens of nobles filled the glowing chamber. Some bowed respectfully. Others looked at him like he was dirt. One stood and raised his voice. "We demand answers. This human is untested, unworthy. He weakens our queen." Another said, "He carries a curse. His kind are violent. He brings war." Derek felt all eyes on him. He stood. "I didn't ask to be chosen," he said. "But I didn't run either. I faced the flame, I passed the trial, I bled beside your queen. What else do you want?" The room grew silent. Then from the back, a voice spoke. "The child, Let's see if he can protect the heir. Everyone turned to the queen. Seraphine slowly rose. I am with child, she said. His child, the heir of two worlds. Gasps, shouts. Some nobles stood in outrage. One even threw down his robe and stormed out. But Derek didn't hear any of that. He just looked at her. You're sure? He whispered. She nodded. Our bond was true. But behind the queen's throne, deep in the shadows, a pair of cold eyes watched and a voice whispered in the dark, then the child must not live. The child of two worlds. The queen was not breathing. Derek's hands trembled as he pressed his ear to her chest. Her body lay still on the silken bed. The soft hum of palace walls had gone silent. No light danced in the air, only stillness and fear. Moments ago, Queen Seraphine had stood tall before the council, announcing her pregnancy. Now, she was dying. Get help, Derek shouted. Guards rushed in, but their faces were pale. No one touched her. No healer will come. One whispered. They say the child is cursed. Derek's heart burned. Then I'll save her myself. He knelt beside her, clutching her hand. Her skin was cold. His mark began to glow, bright and wild. Suddenly, a soft light rose from her belly. It flickered, weak like a fading candle. Then came a sound. A heartbeat. Not hers, a small one. Fast. Alive. He gasped. The child is fighting. A gentle voice spoke behind him. She needs the flame spring, said an elder alien woman dressed in tattered robes. It lies beneath the palace. Few return from there. But if you love her, you will go. Derek didn't hesitate. The path down was like walking through another world. The deeper he went, the colder the light became. Strange faces appeared in the stone walls. Whispers of ancient rulers watching him. At last he reached a chamber filled with glowing water. The flame spring. He dipped the queen's pendant into the pool. It sizzled. The mark on his wrist shined, so bright it lit the whole room. He knew what he had to do. He had to carry the flame back inside her. When he returned to her room, the nobles were already there. She will not wake, one said coldly. Let the human take the child and leave. Derek didn't speak. He walked to her side, placed the pendant on her chest, and pressed his glowing hand to her heart. Then, he whispered, You're stronger than them. Stronger than fate. Stronger than this poison. A tear fell down his face. I don't want the crown. I don't want the throne. I just want you back. Suddenly, her body arched. Light exploded from her eyes. Her hands gripped his wrist. She gasped for air and then sat up. Alive. The palace shook. The mark on Derek's arm shot a beam of gold into the ceiling, spreading a signal into the sky. In the stars above, ships turned. Machines woke. Old codes activated. A child had been confirmed, a child of two worlds. But not all were happy. In the lowest part of the palace, a dark chamber opened. Inside, a cloaked figure knelt before a large mirror. The heir lives, the figure growled. From the mirror, a cold voice answered, Then strike now, before it is born. Back in her chamber, Seraphine rested, her head on Derek's shoulder. I saw something while I was unconscious, she whispered. A place full of screams, and you, standing between me and death. Derek didn't speak. He only held her, hand tighter. You're not just my bondmate anymore, she said softly. You're the child's protector. Suddenly the door burst open. A young guard entered, gasping. My queen. The Star Reavers have broken through our sky gate. They're heading here. They say they want the child. Seraphine stood at once. No one touches my son. Or daughter, Derek added. She looked at him and smiled for the first time since waking. He turned to the guard. Get me armor. I may not be a warrior like you people, but I'll fight like hell for them. The human who defied the stars, he was just a mechanic. That's what Derek kept telling himself as he looked down at the armor they had given him. It wasn't made for humans. Too tight in some places, too loose in others. The helmet blinked in a language he couldn't read. The chest plate hummed like a living thing. And still it didn't matter, because outside the palace, war had arrived. The sky was on fire. Alien warships, black and sharp like knives, descended from the clouds. Their engines screamed across the city. The golden towers trembled. Civilians ran for shelter. Children cried in glowing streets. And at the heart of it all, one voice echoed through every speaker. Surrender the child, or we burn the throne. Derek stood beside Queen Seraphine in the war chamber. Generals spoke in quick tones, pointing to maps. Some looked at Derek with doubt. Others ignored him completely, until Seraphine raised her hand. All of you will listen, she said calmly. He wears the mark. He carries the bond. And if I fall, he is the child's only protector. Derek stepped forward. I'm not a soldier, he said. But I'm not running either. He paused, looked every alien in the eye. You want me to stay out of the fight? Then you don't understand humans at all. The enemy's forces were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Floating beasts wrapped in armor, machines that moved like water, soldiers that could vanish into shadows. But they hadn't planned for him, not a general, not a warrior, just one man with something more dangerous than weapons, a reason to fight. Derek was dropped near the outer gates, where the enemy was forcing its way in. The blast doors were breaking. Fire filled the air. He ran through smoke, dodging debris. One child was trapped under a beam. Derek threw it aside, carried the child to cover. Another alien was pinned beneath a wrecked glider. He used tools from his belt to free her, things only a mechanic would carry. And then he saw them. The Star Reavers, dark, fast, merciless. Their blades glowed red. They weren't looking for prisoners. They were hunting for something sacred, the unborn heir. A commander stepped forward from their ranks, tall and cruel. You are the Queen's pet, he sneered. Give up the child's location and I will end you quickly. Derek didn't answer. He simply raised his weapon. I don't need to be fast, I just need to stand long enough. The fight was brutal. Derek was outmatched, but he fought smart. He used palace tech to create force fields, trapped soldiers between energy gates, rerouted power to overload enemy weapons. He didn't win by strength. He won by thinking. Won by one. He took them down. Back inside the palace, Queen Seraphine watched from a glowing screen. A single tear ran down her cheek. He's not just brave, she whispered. He's brilliant. In the final hour of the battle, the commander returned, furious. He held a spear of black flame and threw it with all his might. It flew straight toward the palace doors, where the queen stood, hand on her belly. Derek ran, faster than he ever had in his life. He dove between her and the incoming blast and took the full hit. The world turned white. When he opened his eyes, he was on the floor, burned, broken, but alive. The queen was holding him, tears falling on his face. You should have let it hit me, she whispered. Derek gave her a tired smile. I don't protect you because you're a queen, he said. I protect you because you're mine. At that moment, the palace lights shifted. A beam rose from the center tower. All across Zelara, the sky turned gold. A message had been sent to every corner of the galaxy. The child lives. The bond holds. The human stands. The lover who became legend. They made songs about him. Not on Earth, but across the stars. In alien markets, crystal halls, and drifting space stations, children whispered stories of the human who bled for a queen, of the outsider who defied prophecy, and became one. But Derek never cared for the songs. He only cared about the sound of one heartbeat, his child's. Months had passed since the final battle. Peace had returned to Zelara, but not silence. The palace was alive now, with new life. The child was born in the middle of the night under a glowing storm. Lightning danced across the sky as Seraphine screamed in pain, Derek holding her hand, unsure of how to help. But the moment he heard that first cry, everything stopped. The baby was small, glowing slightly, skin like silver, eyes like starlight, and a mark already forming on their chest. Neither human nor alien. Something new. I thought I'd be afraid, Derek whispered, cradling the child in his arms. But I've never felt this kind of peace. Seraphine, weak but smiling, leaned against him. They will call this child many names. Let them, Derek said. We'll call them ours. But even as joy filled the halls, shadows lingered. In corners, one noble knelt before a secret council. We failed to destroy the child, she said coldly, but the human still walks our throne. He must be removed. A hooded figure nodded. Then let history erase him. Back in the palace, Derek found himself walking alone at night. He stopped at a quiet balcony where the stars hung close. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him until a blade pressed to his back. You don't belong here, said the assassin. Derek didn't flinch. That's what they said on Earth, too. The blade moved, but so did he. Years of training, fast hands, quick thinking. He knocked the weapon away and pinned the attacker to the wall. Then he pulled off the mask. It wasn't a warrior. It was a young boy, barely older than 15, terrified, shaking. My family said you'd destroy us, the boy whispered, that the child would make us slaves. Derek stepped back. He didn't hate the boy. He pitied him. Then come meet her, he said gently. She's not a weapon. She's just a baby. My baby. The next day, the boy stood before the royal, child tiny, laughing, reaching for the stars through a clear dome. She's not scary, he whispered. No, Derek said softly, but she'll be strong, because she'll know love from both worlds. After that day, everything changed. The queen gave Derek a new title, Heartbinder of Zalara. He didn't want crowns or power, so he used his title to rebuild peace. He worked with alien engineers, fixed old power stations, taught human farming methods to struggling villages. He was no longer just a lover to the queen. He became the bridge between two species, and then came the day Earth sent a ship. It hovered, in orbit, asking for the human named Derek Holt. He stood before the screen. An old general appeared. You are requested to return for debriefing. Derek smiled. You're too late. I already found my mission. He ended the call. In the end, no war returned, no army marched again. Because one man had done what kings and generals failed to do, he stayed. Many years later, alien children would sit around a fire and ask, did the queen really fall in love with a human? And the old storytellers would smile. Yes, they'd say. And he did not just love her back, he changed our stars forever. Back in the palace garden, Derek watched his child take their first steps, tiny feet on alien soil. Seraphine stood beside him, her hand in his. They'll remember you, she whispered. He smiled. No, they'll remember us. The end.